Hello everyone! In today's video I wanted to introduce you to the races of Faerun that you will be able to pick from while playing Baldur's Gate 3. I will also be showing you popular class combinations with races, either by flavor or power, if you decide to create the strongest character possible. But keep in mind that all race and class combinations are viable in Baldur's Gate 3 and there is no wrong choice. So the first thing that should determine your pick is your own enjoyment and what do you want to play the most. I'm sure you can finish the game with a Half-Orc wizard just as well as any other combination, so make sure to have fun first and foremost, and take my suggestions as a guide to familiarize yourself with the races of Baldur's Gate 3 and pick a class that will fit your character the most. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for watching my videos. I just started my channel recently and I never in my dreams imagined that we're gonna be breaking 10,000 views on the videos, so I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope that you enjoyed this content and let me know what else you would like to see from me. I'll gladly prepare you for Baldur's Gate 3 in the best way I can, and just thank you for being here, and visit me on my live streams because I love to hang out with people when I stream games, and obviously we're also gonna be streaming some Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes out. So the races that we can pick from in Baldur's Gate 3 are as follow: Human, Githyanki, Half-Orc, Dwarf, Elf, Drow, Tiefling, Halfling, Half-Elf, Gnome, and Dragonborn. It's important to note that Dragonborn were announced very recently, same with Half-Orcs and Duergar, so I will be covering them, even though they are not available in the character creation yet. We know the rules in Dungeons and Dragons and what traits they have, so I will cover them using the tabletop edition. Of course, Larian can always change a little bit the races and sub-races, but I think most of the things will come into the game in the same shape. I will also be covering the recently revealed Monk class and showing you the combinations with this class as well. Straight away, let us get into the newly announced Dragonborn. Dragonborn has two ability score improvements, namely +2 to strength and +1 to charisma, which instantly make them prime candidates for example, paladins or classes that use martial prowess with some charisma checks. So also warlocks and sorcerer could be good if you decide to go towards more of a battlecaster that does some melee and also can blast some spells. As a Dragonborn, you're also gonna be able to pick your draconic ancestry, which means you're gonna have some abilities associated with the color you pick. For example, if you're gonna be a gold dragon, you're gonna be able to breathe fire. If you're gonna be a black dragon, you're gonna spew acid. You can use it once per long or short rest. It's some nice AoE early on, especially if you're a melee class. It's very nice to have. It also scales a bit, so that's nice. And also you have damage resistance associated with the element of your color. So as you can probably tell by now, one of the most common combinations are Dragonborn with a paladin, because you have +2 to strength and +1 to the all-important charisma. They just make a great frontliner character and also pretty tanky with their additional resistances and also some additional elemental damage, AoE, which you can do on early levels. It can help you out quite a bit. But the Paladin is of course not the only choice that you have as a Dragonborn. You can play whatever you want as your scaly friend, but do consider that the charisma and strength bonus that you get do gear you more towards being a frontliner hybrid mixed with perhaps some casting charisma class like the Warlock, like the Sorcerer. Another cool option for the Dragonborn could be the Bard, especially from the College of Swords. You could combine your musical abilities with your spells using the bonus charisma and make a very cool frontliner using strength and sword and shield, for example. I forgot to mention that the chromatic Dragonborns will actually probably get a different secondary score than charisma. It might work like a half-elf, where you're gonna be able to actually choose your secondary abilities to mold your Dragonborn more towards the evil path, because chromatic dragons usually are pretty evil.
And now let us go into our Half-Orc friends,
which, as you can tell, are probably geared mostly towards battle. You get +2 strength and +1 constitution as a Half-Orc, which means, well, you are geared towards being a barbarian or a fighter the most, because you want to be beefy and you want to hit hard. You also get relentless endurance, which means that when you are reduced to 0 hit points, you actually don't fall, but keep standing with 1 HP. It is a bit similar if you, for example, played Divinity Original Sin 2 with the Combat Kit talent. It just means that you're gonna keep standing when something reduces you below 0 hit points, but of course it can't be that overpowered to do it all the time. It only happens once per combat. And also you have savage attacks. That is an amazing thing, because when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice one additional time and add it to the extra damage of the critical hits. So that just gears you towards being a menace in melee, because you're gonna be doing more crits. For example, the newly announced champion class from the fighter is geared towards crit fishing, as it is called, so you're gonna do even more damage as a Half-Orc with that class, for example. You're also gonna get dark vision, which is very useful in the game, and menacing, which gives you proficiency in intimidation skill. So again, it just screams barbarian to me the most. And now, from the depths of the Underdark, the Duergar. The Duergar are a very resilient race that have a constitution score increased by 2 and strength by 1. So again, quite a beefy dude. As well, you're gonna get superior dark vision, which is a better version of dark vision. You're gonna see further out in the darkness. You get Duergar resistance, which gives you advantage on saving throws against illusions and against being charmed or paralyzed. You also get advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. Sounds pretty amazing. Also, you're gonna have Duergar magic, that will unlock at level 3. You're gonna be able to cast enlarge and reduce a person, no matter if you are a spellcaster or not. You're also gonna be able to use enlarge only on yourself, but you can reduce enemy size if you so choose. And on level 5, you're gonna have invisibility spell, which is very nice, especially if you decide to go the more cunning route. It's going to open up some nice build synergies, especially with ranger and rogues, the gloomstalkers and assassins most commonly, because you're gonna have an additional source of going invisible, which you want as the stealthy class. Don't be discouraged that because you have a strength score of +1, you have to be a beefy dude on the front lines, because the constitution +2 is useful for everyone. You're gonna have more health in that bad situations where you're actually gonna be revealed or you're gonna be the target of the enemy. So it's still a very nice class to do a more stealthy build character. Thanks to the invisibility spell, the Duergar can also make some cool shadow monks. It is also important to note that as a dwarven subrace, you will move a little bit slower than your elvish and human counterparts. And also, you don't have to actually be a dexterity based rogue or ranger. You can just as well do a strength variant, which I'm gonna have probably more builds on this channel to help you out with different kinds of builds further on when we get even more information on Baldur's Gate 3 when it actually releases. And now let us go through the races available to us in the game, and I will show you each of the combinations of races and classes, starting with the good old-fashioned human. As a human, you're gonna have your ability scores increased by 1 in every category, so it makes it a very versatile class to play. You don't get much from being a human alone, except for your ability scores being increased, but it's still a very powerful tool to have when deciding on your class, because maybe you want to multi-class into a character that will use multiple different attributes, and then the human really comes to shine. For example, maybe you will want to play a bard that focuses both on melee and range, and then you would want to have some more dexterity on strength, a good chunk of constitution, and maybe intelligence for your skill checks, because bards usually are what is called skill monkeys, which means they are good at every type of conversation and are adaptable to every situation they find themselves in the world. So it's something to take into consideration when choosing human. But really, as with most RPGs, humans are the safe choice that you can't really go wrong with. If you want to roleplay the classical guy that just found himself in this world, a human will be a good choice for any class you want. Next up, we have the elves with two variants, the high elves and the wood elves. High elves actually get a cantrip that you can use no matter what class you're gonna pick. It's handy to have, as you can, for example, choose to have mage hand to be able to reach some objects you wouldn't normally be able to get to. You can also choose to have some spell like minor cantrip with damage ability, for example firebolt, if you want to get to those enemies that are just out of reach of you. Also, both of the elven subclasses get the keen senses ability, which makes you proficient in perception. They also get +2 to dexterity, longsword, shortsword, longbow and shortbow proficiency, which can be very handy when you want to use your wizard with some more weapons than just the basic staves, for example. Also good in multiclassing when you want to have some ability in melee. You also get the basic dark vision and fey ancestry, which gives you advantages on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. As a high elf subrace, you also get +1 to intelligence, which naturally makes you a good choice for the wizard class. The +2 dexterity also comes in handy because you don't want to be super squish as your wizard and you don't want to die from a fly attacking you, so having a bit more AC is always nice to have. High elves also make for great rogues because you can get your dexterity up to 17 right away, and the intelligence is also nice to have because it's gonna make you better at skill checks, which rogues are pretty good at already. If you're gonna choose to be a wood elf instead, you're gonna have a +1 to wisdom instead of intelligence, which makes you right away a very good ranger, because rangers have their spellcasting abilities and spell slots based on wisdom. They also come with the Mask of the Wild trait, which make you proficient in stealth. Wood elves can also make good clerics if you decide to go more into dexterity and maybe not wear medium or heavy armor, if you decide to be more of an agile priest, for example from the trickery domain. Next up we have the Tieflings, which come with 3 different subraces. All of them share one trait, which is Hellish Resistance, which gives you resistance to fire, which means you take only half damage from it, which is just great throughout the whole game. All of the Tieflings also get basic Dark Vision. Now when it comes to variants, Asmodeus Tieflings get +1 intelligence and +2 charisma. You also get the Thaumaturgy cantrip for free, which gives you advantage on intimidation and performance checks for 10 turns. As you can probably already tell, the Asmodeus Tiefling makes for a great bard, because the +2 charisma is really nice to have and the +1 intelligence makes you an even better skill monkey. The Asmodeus Tiefling gives you the opportunity to raise your charisma all the way to 17 if you so choose, and also can have decent intelligence, and don't forget about your dexterity if you want to have a bit more AC as a bard, but as always you don't have to pick a bard necessarily. It can also be a great class for a warlock or a sorcerer. Next up we have the Mephistopheles Tiefling, which is actually almost the same when it comes to the traits. It also gives +1 intelligence and +2 charisma. The only difference is that you get the Mage Hand cantrip, which can be useful to reach some spaces that you otherwise could not. And then we get to the Zerial Tiefling, which is actually quite a bit different because it gives you +1 strength instead of intelligence, which, you guessed it, makes for a great paladin. And we also get back our Thaumaturgy cantrip, which makes it way easier to pass a lot of conversation checks. This Tiefling lets you get all the way to 17 charisma with decent strength at 16 and makes you a very strong starting paladin, but again, don't be discouraged to pick a different class because it's still gonna make a great bard if you decide to be on the strength variant, and also a Gish character if you decide to mix it up with a warlock or sorcerer again. Now we arrive at the Drow, which split into the evil worshipping Love Drows and the goody Seldarin Drows. They are virtually the same in terms of abilities. Of course the flavor of playing them is way different, but let's get into their statistics. As with every other family of the elf, the Drows receive kin senses and fey ancestry, but except for that they also get +2 dexterity and +1 charisma and rapier proficiency instead of longsword, and that should right away tell you that they make for great warlocks and sorcerer, thanks to the bonus charisma and dexterity make them a bit more dodgy, and also make you a good candidate for Pact of the Blade subclass, which bonus dexterity gonna make you a better melee fighter if you decide to use those rapiers. Naturally they also make for great sorcerers. Honorable mention that both of the Drows also get the Dancing Light cantrips on level 1, and on level 3 you get the Fairy Fire ability, which is very nice and handy to have. Now we come to the Githyanki, which has no subraces, similar to the Human and Half-Orc, which I'm a bit sad about because I love Githzerai, but it is what it is. So the cool thing about the Githyanki is that they get the light and medium armor proficiency right away, as well as short sword, long sword and great sword, which, as you can tell, makes them for great gishes, which means you can mix a spellcasting class with wearing armor and also taking some martial classes like the fighter. It makes them for great hybrid classes. Not only that, they get +2 strength and +1 intelligence, which even further boosts this goal of picking a gish character. As the name suggests, this is actually the name kinda originated from. That's why they make for great fighting spellcasters. You also get the Mage Hand cantrip, which is nice, and on level 3 you also gonna get the Githyanki jump cantrip, which makes you even more mobile. A great choice for the Githyanki is the Fighter Arcane Knight subclass, which you unlock in level 3 in your fighter, which makes you be able to use some spells, but you can also branch out to a wizard to make him even more powerful in the spellcasting department. The ability points you want to look at if you want to build this kind of character is strength and intelligence if you decide to be a hybrid, or you can just focus purely on strength, which you can get all the way to level 17, boost your constitution, a bit of dexterity if you want, and wisdom to make your saves better against spells mostly, to make a very strong versatile class. Also remember to boost your intelligence significantly along with strength if you decide to go to the Gish route. The mighty dwarves in their golden halls. We already covered the Duergar, so we just have the gold dwarf to cover and the shield dwarf. Gold dwarves get +2 constitution and +1 to wisdom, and also they get battle axe, hand axe and light hammer proficiency. Oh, and also warhammer. So that prompts us to get into the classes, and guess what? They make for great clerics because you get wisdom, you get more beefy thanks to constitution, and you can make a great clerics thanks to that. The abilities you want to focus on is obviously wisdom. You have high constitution already. You could even opt to get 17 constitution right away if you want to make you really tanky as a cleric. And of course you want to raise your strength and your wisdom to good levels, especially wisdom to at least 16, so you can cast more of those very important spells. All dwarves get dwarven resilience, which gives you advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance to poison damage. Gold dwarves also get the dwarven toughness, which increases your hit points by 1 and increases by 1 again every time you gain a level. Now shield dwarves are very interesting because they get light armor and medium armor proficiency right away, but ironically they do not get shield proficiency, so you cannot use your shields right away, but shield proficiency obviously can be gained through the fighter or other classes. You get +2 strength and +2 constitution, so right away you know that this guy will make for a great fighter, for a great barbarian, great martial classes. What's also unique about the shield dwarf is that you can get your strength all the way to 17 along with constitution to 17, which makes you a powerhouse right when you're gonna step on that ship. You also can raise your dexterity a little bit if you decide to go maybe to the barbarian route and forgo the heavy armor. You can also, of course, just focus on being a melee powerhouse. Half-elves, a very powerful race which gets a bonus of +2 charisma in every single of their subclasses, and also you can choose an ability improvement of +1 to 2 of them, but you cannot tunnel both of your ability scores into one statistic. It has to be, for example, an additional +1 to strength and +1 to dexterity or constitution, however you want to choose. And this race and sub-races, you guessed it, make for a great paladin thanks to the +2 charisma, but also great bards, warlocks and sorcerers. You can get to 17 charisma right away and also have a nice spread of stats elsewhere. Think about increasing your strength if you want to go the paladin route or just being a more melee oriented class, while also keeping your constitution relatively high and your dexterity if you forgo the heavier armors. The only difference between the subclasses is that the high elf half-elf gets the cantrip from their cousins of full blood, and also the drow get their dancing lights from their drow cousins, and also wood elves get mask of the wild, which gives proficiency in stealth, and fleet of foot, which makes them traverse the terrain easier and be a bit faster. Or in Baldur's Gate 3 terms, you'll be able to move a bit further away. Overall, half-elves are a great race to pick because they borrow the best aspects of their full-blooded cousins while also having better attributes and dark vision, which just makes them a complete package. Now we come to the brave race of halflings, which split into lightfoots and stronghearts. Both of them have same race features, namely having +2 dexterity and the lucky trait and brave. Lucky in particular is very powerful because when you roll a 1 on your attack roll or ability check or even a saving throw, you can reroll the die and must use the new roll. It's very good, especially early game. Brave gives you advantage on saving throws against being frightened. Now when the two races differ is that the lightfoot halfling get the naturally stealthy trait, which gives you proficiency in stealth checks, and also you get +1 charisma. That makes them, you guessed it, great bards, especially if you decide to go the range route, because you'll be able to increase your charisma and also be more stealthy, or also you can of course dodge more attacks thanks to higher AC. They also make for the good warlocks thanks to the +1 charisma and the lucky trait, which lets you reroll some unlucky stuff, and it also synergizes pretty well with some of the warlock abilities. Of course, sorcerer is also an option. The +1 charisma, a common theme, of course, makes the sorcerer a solid pick. Now when it comes to Strongheart halflings, they get Strongheart resilience, which gives you advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage, and also a +1 to constitution, which makes them a prime choice to perhaps a more beefier class. For example, you can pick a barbarian, which would be pretty funny, but why not? It's Dungeons and Dragons, you can do anything you want. You can be a more dex build barbarian, or perhaps a rogue, which also would be really nice. This constitution comes in handy as well, because, well, you do want to have a bit more hit points. Even if you decide to hide in shadows in a lot, it's still good to have a decent constitution score. And last but not least, we come to the gnomes, which come in 3 variants. That's forest gnomes, deep gnomes, also called as Firneblin, and the rock gnomes. All of the races races come with +2 intelligence and Gnome cunning, which gives you advantage on intelligence, wisdom and charisma saving throws. The Forest Gnome, no matter the class, also get the Speak with Animal spell, which is very handy, especially in Baldur's Gate. We're gonna have a lot of animals to talk to, so it's a very cool thing to have. Forest Gnomes also get +1 to Dexterity and Dark Vision. So, as you can tell, thanks to +2 intelligence, that makes them very good spellcasters, especially wizards, who of course rely on intelligence to cast their spells, so it is the most common choice despite the name of Forest Gnome. Now the main difference between a Deep Gnome and their cousins is superior Dark Vision, which lets you see further in the dark, and Stone Camouflage, which gives you advantage on stealth checks. So if you want to perhaps create a rogue, this might be a race for you. Rock Gnomes on the other hand get +1 Constitution and Artificer's Lore, which gives you proficiency to history checks. Honestly, this stat spread is not the best, but you can make it work. If you want to make, for example, a wizard who has a bit more constitution, it's gonna be totally fine. Sorry guys and girls, I was covering so much stuff that I actually forgot to mention monk in most of my races. So the general rule of thumb of monk is that you want to pick a class that has bonus to wisdom, of course, and to dexterity to make you as agile as possible and to boost your abilities and spells, because monks are based on the wisdom ability the most. So for example, unironically, Wood Elves would make for a great monk, because you get your bonus to dexterity and wisdom. And that, my friends, concludes our race class combinations. Let me know if you liked it, if it was helpful. Let me know what else you would like to see on the channel, and visit me on Twitch TV Kainra, where I'm gonna live stream some games, and of course Baldur's Gate as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.